I'm out cutting the grass on our 25-acre property, and I'm thinking about some of the big factors around my wife and I investing in this, 50-acre property. We're going to be putting in $3-4 million. We're now worth $5 million. And one of the big factors that I've been thinking through is that crypto's going mainstream. And what do I mean by this is that I've been, I was at a Wu-Tang Clan concert last night, and I was thinking through this as I'm cutting the grass, and I'm going, I don't know if you can see my grass right there. I'm going through everything, and I was like, you know what? In like the mid '80s, hip hop started to come out. Grandmaster Flash, Run DMC, those guys started to pop off. Boogie Down Productions, and then into the '90s, it exploded, right? And then now, all the way up through the 2010s, it literally took over rock. Like, rock doesn't even exist really anymore in pop culture and mainstream. And it makes me think about what is happening right now with the Genius Act, with the Clarity Act. And when we think through what happened with hip hop, is that it came up, people started to like it, people started to really enjoy it. They started to mix things, in the early stage. Run DMC had that big hit with Aerosmith, and they started to go through this and see like, wow, it brought in people from rock into hip hop. And what's really interesting is now we're seeing a lot more hip hop with country. And so a lot of people who are country fanatics are slowly creeping into the hip hop world. And how does this relate to what's going on in the crypto world? Is that now we have the Genius Act, okay, which is essentially letting stable coins exist, and it's clarifying how stable coins will exist. It's clarifying and providing a regulation for Bitcoin and for Ethereum and for Solana and for all these major blockchain, for the blockchain to exist, to have things built upon it, and to have a decision of like, hey, this is how we're going to regulate it. This is how it's going to be a system where we take fiat currency and mix this with digital currency. And you're seeing big players like Visa, American Express, MasterCard joining. Okay, and you're seeing even somebody like Ripple, who's now filing to the OCC to become a bank. So it's becoming mainstream. And then we're looking at the Clarity Act that just got signed by the House and is clear through. And now, what's the Clarity Act? The Clarity Act sort of reminds me of a parenting situation where as a parent, a lot of parents, myself included, my wife included, is sometimes we parent our kids a little bit differently. And, we might say something to our kid one way, and that kid goes to mom, and then mom says something else. And then my wife's like, why did you tell them this? And there's no clarity around it. And what's interesting is that that's what's happening right now with the Clarity Act, is that now the government is clarifying, okay, when a token is issued, it's a commodity, okay? So the first form is going to be regulated by the SEC. Now, if we think about the SEC, they're going to regulate, okay, this comes into action. This is going to be this token that is issued. That's going to be regulated. The issuance is going to be regulated by the SEC. However, anything after that is going to be regulated by the CFTC. And I want to use this as an example, is that back in the day, if we used, 60, 70 years ago in the market, you would actually get like a piece of paper. You would get a document that I own a lot of shares in AMD. Okay, so I'd have these shares on actual paper. And then I could take those, that would be regulated by the SEC, the first issuance of those shares. But I could take those shares then, and I could call up my neighbor who's right behind you guys, and I could say, yo, I've got 50 of these. You want to buy 10 of them? I'll sell you at this cost. Okay. And that would be regulated by the CFTC. And what's happening now with crypto is that is actually what's going to occur, is that the CFTC is way more hands off. The CFTC is way more, they have way more freedom and allowance for someone to trade these things without regulation. And so the big interesting part here is that we've been waiting for this catalyst, right? And we've been looking through going, well, we have to, keep it deregulated. But what's going to end up happening is that when crypto goes to the moon, which it's probably going to over the next 3 to 6 months, and then over the next 10 years, think about 10 years from now, Bitcoin, Ethereum, Tom Lee just bought, now they're up to almost $1 billion worth of Ethereum. And he just put out a prediction that now he thinks it might go to $30,000 with Ethereum. So the reason why this is happening is because it's all regulated clearly. And so the retail space that's already early into crypto, now there's other players that are going to come into it, institutions that are going to come into it, older people with a lot of money that are going to come into it because now they don't see it as fraudulent. So the irony is that we're seeing both form, fiat and digital currency are uniting. Crypto and fiat are uniting, right? And the interesting fact here is that Jerome Powell is the one who's setting this up, saying like, look, I think these banks, I think this is okay. I think this is, the crypto space is ready for this to happen. Then Trumpsky is actually saying like, hey, I want to buy a ton of Bitcoin because I think that we should have a Bitcoin reserve, and it's going to increase the value of the dollar because stable coins, which will be built on Ethereum, will have this ability now to be transferred, but they have to be regulated by having a reserve either in a dollar or in a treasury bill, and they can get audited every single month. And the people who are going to be doing these audits are going to typically be the state or federal auditing, and the CFTC has the ability to do this. So what's ending up to happening currently is that now with mainstream work and with mainstream regulation, what's good about regulation is now it's not perceived as fraudulent. Okay. Now people will be more open-minded. When more people get into the space, it rises in value. And then there's going to be greater levels of utility. And when there's greater levels of utility, now that's going to likely increase the value of the American dollar because so many corporations are going to be investing in this space on the blockchain, forming stable coins, and then investing in the US dollar. So we're really, truly, as Tom Lee put it, we're at like the ChatGPT moment. We're at the 1996, 1997 version of the internet. That's where we currently are. And I like to think about this even as the form of like ETFs. ETFs have been a huge thing that have like taken over mutual funds. It's made it a lot easier to do financial investing, right? For a normal person like us, ETFs are a lot simpler to work with. And it was the regulations in the 90s that enabled this. And now the thing is like we hear regulations and we think through like, oh, well, the government's going to be watching us. But the CFTC isn't going to be taking the coin all the time and say, well, who has a coin now? Or how did they get this? They don't care. Okay. What the SEC is doing is they're saying this is a legitimate asset. This is a legitimate commodity. Okay. You can now take this and you can trade it freely on the market. And just like hip hop in the 90s, now we're going to see it start to explode. You know, the Beastie Boys came, Run DMC came, and everything popped off. And what's going to happen too is that now, because we know who is actually regulating it, we're going to see a lot of players come into the space. It's going to be very, very interesting. So I just wanted to share that. I've been thinking through that. I got back from that Wu-Tang Clan concert last night. Lauryn Hill was there. LL Cool J was there. Freeway was there. All the members of Wu-Tang were there. Run the Jewels opened up for him. And I was just sitting there going like, this really does remind me of this space. Like hip hop dominates now. Hip hop dominates everything in music. Now I just made this correlation. Like I really, really think this is what's going to happen with crypto. We're going to see both systems exist. And both systems will grow together. And really because Ethereum and because of these regulations, a lot of the US companies are going to explode that are going to be using the blockchain technology. So I hope that helps somebody out there. Just understand that a little bit further. The Clarity Act is a big step in the right direction as far as like deregulatory regulations, if that makes sense. Until next time, peace.